The other thing is I'm going to talk about, and we'll demonstrate this for you. We won't do it with the puppies. We'll play with our puppies first. But right as we finish playing with the puppies, I'll talk a little bit about what we call restrained play. And restrained play is things that we borrow basically from the world of protection sports to make dogs play better. One of the things that I discovered over my career doing protection work with dogs was the way we develop young dogs in protection work isn't protection work, it's just play. It's tug of war, right? And so once our dogs are familiar with harnesses, and we've been using harnesses for restrained recalls and all that kind of thing, and the dogs are comfortable, then we can do what we call restrained play. So the handler or someone holds the dog on a harness, and someone's out in front of the dog with a toy, and we tease the dog with the toy. I can put the toy on a string and whip it back and forth. The puppy's trying to get to it and frustrated. That frustration increases their motivation and makes them try harder. So one of the things that we borrow from protection sports is the use of frustration. I can tease the dog while they're being restrained, and it cranks them up. The next thing that I borrow from that world is something called back pressure, right? And so we have a harness on the puppy, and somebody's holding a line. So when the puppy grabs whatever the object is, if I have a soft toy on the end of a string or a rag or whatever it is I'm playing with the puppy with, when they bite that, if I pull against that harness, we call this back pressure. There's pressure pulling back on the harness while they're actually in the act of grabbing something. It makes them have to hold on harder because they're getting pulled against. And if they don't hold on, it slips out of their mouth and we frustrate them. So it'll make them hold on harder and firmer if I'm pulling against the harness while they're biting, right? So back pressure, this technique, is something we use to make dogs hold on harder when they're playing tug to increase their intensity in their play. The other thing that it can do, back pressure can do, is it can prevent a dog from chewing a lot when they're playing, right? Dogs that have what we call an active mouth. So when we play tug of war with dogs, right, some dogs are more prone to chomping on the object and some clamp down and hold on, right? We would prefer the latter. We would like the dog to just clamp down and hold on to the toy, right? Not because it means anything to the dog. You can have a dog that's chomping away on the toy and they think that's great. They're having a great time. But it's not that much fun to play tug with a dog that's chewing on the toy because they move, they bite your fingers, they slip off, all kinds of stuff happens. So if they're chomp right in the middle of when I pull, it slips out of their mouth and then they come flying at me trying to grab it again and I get my fingers bit. Or they move as they're chomping down to one side and all that kind of stuff. So it's much nicer to play with a dog that holds on, right? Just grabs it and holds on. Makes our life easier, right? You may get it, you may not get it, but it's something we strive for. And back pressure can control that, right? So if I have a harness and a line on the dog, if I'm pulling against that as I'm playing tug, if they try to chew, every time they open their mouth, they lose it, right? It slips out of their mouth and I jump back and they can't reach me anymore. And I go, nah, 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 nah. You want this, don't you? And they're like, oh God. Next time they go, I'm not chewing because every time I open my mouth, it gets away from me, right? If I do a lot of that, it'll make your dog really possessive too though. So we'll talk about that as we go. You have to balance possession with interactive play as we go. But that's another, back pressure can create that.